Welcome back to Tinfoil Hat Time. Today we're going to have a look at EU, these rules we're trying to put into place regarding internet stuff, and it's kind of looking like they're kind of doing some weird things. Like, how can some of their laws are putting into effect impact how we do things over here? But really it does only if we allow the European Union in. But I mean, I could go on and block everybody from over there from viewing everything I put on the internet, but I don't think that's quite the right idea. What is going on? Of course, who's IngSoc? Of course, that's the English Socialist Party in Oceania, one of the three feuding, warring countries in 1984. And the EU is just kind of starting to look like some of this stuff. So let's go ahead and jump on in. So, of course, I am talking about, if you are unaware, I'm talking about the these Article 13 and Article 11 issues. Now, there's there's some misconception, there's some confusion, there's some blurring of the trends. We're seeing quite a bit more about the Article 13, not quite as much about Article 11. They are both equally horribly bad, and we need to keep in context what is going on here. So first, let's separate these two out so we can actually have a good, clear communication about them. All right, so first, we have these two new rules. Of course, GDPR just passed. I've said enough about that, I think. And it's kind of really, it's a scary thing, really. But the fact of the matter is, we need to recognize that GDPR applied. It was applied specifically to European citizens, but how do you possibly enforce something only to the European citizens? That's what kind of raised some of the issues and some of the challenges, and that's kind of what I wanted to look at here. The fact is, though, is these two other rules are coming down, which again will apply essentially if you're doing business in the European Union. But how can I take a website, put it out into the world, and have it not be visitable by those individual groups? And that is specifically a question that we need to address here. Article 13, this is regarding to a rule that is going to be voted on either in June 20th or like June 21st or in September. June 21st is essentially the time, so a lot of your activism is going to be geared towards telling, particularly if you are in a European Union country, you need to let your legislators know this is silly and you need to do something about it. Article 13 basically says that any website that has the ability to upload public content, i.e. YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Reddit, any type of forums, any type of blog that allows comments, any type of post, anything where a person can come in here and upload content or even say something, you need to have a system in place that will automatically check against a database of known copyrighted materials unless you have a specific license for that particular group. So in other words, you will either have to put in some type of AI system to constantly checking for all this stuff, or you have to get a license for anybody that you would like to link to. That's Article 13. Of course, Article 13, what does this impact? It does not threaten the ability to link. These guys are a little bit off, and that's a little bit on the frightening side. As best as I can tell, Article 13 doesn't have anything to do with links. But anything else, blogging, because I can upload somebody's content. I could feasibly do that. Now, as a blogger myself, I could upload content, or anybody in my comment section which could post something that could display something that could be copyrighted. So posting an image or anything like that. Discussion platforms, absolutely. Live streams, yep, I couldn't show hey, here's a mug from Dave Ramsey. Whoa, I just violated it because I displayed somebody's copyrighted logo, even though it's an old one. The ability to remix if you do music. The ability to remix, grab beats, splice things up, make a beat, make a spin, all that kind of stuff. Parodies. Of course, I have written a parody. The reason I wrote this parody is because the original book comes in, the original book which is called The Art of Neighboring, that all of the big churches in my town got together as a consortium and said, let's change our town. And so they all read this book and it's like, ooh, this is the greatest book ever. It was the most theological piece of horse manure I've read in a decade. It was the worst book I've read in a decade, and I can't for the life of me figure out how a group of pastors in my town could possibly think it was a good book to read. And so rather than get mad, I wrote a parody. This was completely illegal now under that. And if you'd like a copy of this parody, you can pick that up at ourwalkinchrist.com, or you can find it on Amazon. If you're European Union, of course, because of VAT and all that fun stuff, check out PayHip, or, of course, your Amazon store out there will take care of it as well. But parodies are blocked. Memes are blocked. And then this is the one that we're getting a lot of the pushback from regarding the big tech companies, is sharing of code. GitHub, which hopefully we're jumping ship and jumping over to GitLab, but even sharing of code on GitLab is taken up by this, because there is no ability for you to say, nope, you can freely share it. It simply is, if it's out there, you got to have the original publisher's permission. Like, it's not even their permission. It's just, you got to... It's weird. It's crazy how much this is. This is actually the most recent version, which came out yesterday of this. And I actually did take the time to read this mess. It's not a lot. You pretty much just read the column over here. This is the original proposal. This is the amended proposal. So the parts that are causing, I think, most of the issues come around here. In the absence of any licensing agreement with the rights holders, online content sharing service providers shall take, in cooperation with right holders, appropriate and proportionate measures leading to the non-availability of copyright or related infringement. So this means I either have to manually review everything that is put on any site that I own, or I have to have some type of automated robot system. And we know how well these automated robotic systems work. Particularly those of us on YouTube who are having our content perpetually demonetized. That is certainly a problem. That is certainly a challenge. That is really the biggest clause in this. And there's some other things in here that are a little weird as well. But basically, Article 13 is a huge issue regarding sharing of information. Now, this is a separate thing than what is called Article 11. Article 11 is basically your link tax. The 13 is overshadowing 11, but I would say 11 is more troubling. In fact, I think that Electronic Frontier Foundation did a better job of linking up both of these. So, upload filtering and link tax changes. How have they changed? Now, of course, these were first proposed, it was 2016, and they've been talking about this. So, of course, 2016, it's now 2018, we haven't heard anything about it. This is why it's kind of important that we need to, take a little bit of more direction here. So, what happened to the link tax? Really nothing. Basically, Spain put in one of these, mostly because Google would come in, someone would be like, let's look something up, blah, 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 blah. Do a Google search, and you get this list of news aggregates. You could click on the link and go over to there. Well, they're like, no, because you're displaying their information, the headline from their news article. And so now they said, well, now Google, you got to pay all these taxes. So Google simply closed the service down in Spain. It was better, easier to do. Of course, Germany tried to do the same thing. In both cases, it caused the publishers to lose revenue. Because guess what? People look for things on search engines. It shouldn't be that way, maybe. But, I mean, for sure, there's a lot of things we need to use search engines for. But you shouldn't use a search engine to find your favorite news channel. You should be going straight to your favorite news channel. But to look up things for basic research, you need to get in there and do that. So what this would say, effectively, is a lot of people will simply have to pull their content, or these service providers like search engines just won't have the ability to work. And so that's kind of a problematic thing. So what the link tax proposes is that any type of link will be taxed back to the publisher of that. Now, note it's the publisher and not the author. So now I write my own books. I don't do a lot of writing for outside groups. Maybe I will if I get the offer to write an article. I wouldn't mind doing that. But it's not something I actively pursue. But if I were a freelance journalist, i.e. a person who does really good articles and then sells the articles, and if you build yourself up a big reputation, big groups like New York Times, Wall Street Journal, they would beg you to write them an article if you have a big enough following. Well, journalists like that, they don't actually get anything from this link tax. If I were to write an article freelance and sell it to New York Times, and New York Times collects a tax, New York Times gets to keep the money, not the publisher. And there's nothing in there that says, not the writer, and there's nothing in there that says they have to pay me. It's essentially going back to that same old model of the music industry where the producers and the studios would totally screw out the musicians. They would get their little pocket change, but the people who run to the bank more often than anybody are the people selling the CDs and whatever else. And it should be more shared than that. But this ruling doesn't have anything to do with that. So basically, both in Spain and in Germany, these were dismal failures. It actually hurt the publications because nobody was finding them anymore. Nobody knew to find them because, guess what? A search engine like Google, of course, I don't like that. So DuckDuckGo, StartPage, all these other search engines, your favorite search engine is the way you find news articles. You find the news articles, you click on it. If it's an interesting article, guess what? You are now a viewership under that article, and they were allowed to serve you ads. This is a good thing for the publishers, not a bad thing. But of course, they were so concerned with groups like Google producing effectively like a series of links where you could go in and scan the headlines. And there's nothing you're going to do to stop that, guys. There's nothing you can do to stop that, But that's what they tried to solve, and it ended up making it worse for everybody. And so one of the main activists against 13 and 11 is from Germany, realizing that this is going to be a big flop. And so you can read these articles here from Electronic Frontier Foundation about that. 56 different organizations tell the EU legislators to delete the absurd link tax. These are a lot of organizations, which, by the way, this thing is going to completely kill Wikipedia. Wikipedia will just be like, stick a fork in it, he's done. Of course, there's questions, will VPNs allow you to get around this, or will they just simply have to be blocked? We don't know. But of course, a lot of these organizations, of course, this says 56, this says 55. I don't know what it is. I don't think I read this article that closely. But these organizations are sent ahead to the European Parliament Legal Affairs Committee, MEP Axel Voss. Now, by the way, Axel Voss thinks that this is just a compromise. He wants it to be worse. In fact, I was reading some information from some people who were, a little bit more privy to these types of things. At one point in time, in the initial discussions, when the issue was raised that this is bad, he actually says, shut the camera off. And somebody that was actually in that meeting after they shut the camera off came out and said, what happened? He says, well, how many states are against this? And there weren't enough to have, a minority repeal. And so it went on. And he didn't care. And there were a whole lot of people. So basically, this moving on wasn't even voted on. A lot of people hate this, and it wasn't even voted on. Now, they're going to vote on this June 21st or in September. It is imperative, if you are in the European Union, you want to go over to, this is saveyourinternet.eu. You want to come over to the campaign and you want to, is it this one? I forget exactly where the actual campaign is, but come over here and grab the information, reach out to your lawmakers and tell them this is crazy. Of course, for the 11, there's this one. This is savethelink.org/ME. And this one is another one of these. This is specifically relating to Article 11. So keep that in mind. Since I'm not in the European Union, this is nothing I can take direct action on other than telling you guys. But what is the problem? What is the challenge? Why do I, a non-European Union member, really care about this? Well, let me tell you why it's important. GDPR came out just, 2 weeks ago now? Somewhere around there. And even I, a very small business person in United States, have to make sure that websites are GDPR compliant. Otherwise, I have to block EU access. This will do essentially the same thing. While they're technically relating to EU things, it has farther reaches. And that's where this concept of the one world government comes into play. Here is the EU passing rules that it's unknown how much impact it will have on me. But at the same token, it's kind of scary in that it will certainly have impact. So some people, the more tinfoil hat weary guys, more tinfoil hatty than me, are saying, well, these are just tests to see how far reaching can they go, that the EU really is the start of the one world government. I'm not sure that's the case, because there certainly is some pushback against some of what they do. And don't get me wrong, some of the stuff that they're doing here, there's a lot of the things in GDPR I think are a fabulous idea, and I wish we would implement here in America. This is a fundamental stab right to the neck of the internet. We spent a lot of time producing this internet to share this free exchange of information, and now the free exchange of information is being destroyed. Of course, I'm one of these people that I lived before the internet. And I remember the times before the internet, and there were a lot of things before the internet that our society was better for. But there are a whole lot of things now that our society is not the better for. It's a give and it's a take. And I would say that it's better that we have the internet than that we don't, for sure. But at the same token, maybe we need to rely on it less as individuals or as a collective society. But that being said, what this does is this gets us to the point to where, if they want, they can indeed rewrite things. And that's where your IngSoc, where'd that go? Your IngSoc came into play down here. They were this party that was always manipulating the facts, always manipulating the data to say what they wanted the mass populace to know. These taxes and these issues, your big news media outlets have the ability to comply with this. The smaller people like me don't. If these things pass, of course, I could still do this for a period of time in the United States, but I couldn't link to anything in the EU most likely. And it's very possible that if you're in the EU, you couldn't watch the videos or participate nearly as much. I just don't know. I don't know. But what happens is European Union is passing some of these laws which are having a much wider impact than just its citizens. And that means that's really is what a government is. It is a governing body that has implications for the whole, for its citizens under its jurisdiction. Well, if they are passing laws that are widespread to this, guess what? It's a one world government. And it's a corporatocracy. Because the only people that like and can comply to this are the big groups. Notice that these are the smaller groups. Know who's not on this list? Fox, CNN, NBC, ABC. They don't care. They have the resources to comply. But this pushes all of the people reporting real facts. Suppresses them. Better movement towards a state-pushed establishment view. Less freedom of information. That's the problem. That's the issue. What do you think? I hope you've enjoyed this video from Switched to Linux. If you'd like to help support the channel, check out the links at the top. There is another video over here. You can check out our Patreon page down here. And you can check out shop.switchtolinux.com for information on a t-shirt like this or some other designs. Thanks for watching, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.